I'm very honored to be here. I'm a part of this community. I consider myself at home at XP conference, and I'm delighted to give an academic keynote. But to share something about myself, a piece of me stayed in industry. I did have a real job before I joined academia, or a normal job. Although I'm a professor at Blekinge Institute of Technology and a part-time researcher at SINTEF in Norway, I closely collaborate with companies, and very exciting companies like Spotify, Ericsson, Telenor, Sony, Swedbank, Storebrand, and many others. A little bit biased. My research is biased towards Scandinavia, obviously, but those companies, most of them have sites around the globe. So we are very well positioned to contribute to science and to industry. A little bit more about myself and why am I here talking about hybrid and remote work. I've been doing research on distributed development for more than 20 years, and in the beginning it was centered around outsourcing to India and China primarily. And guess what? The pandemic has turned my career upside down and made me an expert on remote working, which is valid for everyone, not only companies outsourcing their business. And I was very delighted to help companies from the beginning of the pandemic to survive and hopefully to thrive as well. I am a flexible worker myself, which means that I'm not an on-site and not a remote worker. I can have a whole week of on-site work and then no weeks at all with any presence. And I think that is great. That's why I am giving an academic talk and not an industrial talk. I also love data visualization and asking the so what question, and I believe in teamwork and we go before ego attitudes at work. And that's why I will focus. We have done research for individuals, for companies, for policymakers, for facility managers even. But today I will talk about teams and teamwork and what remote work has done to teamwork. Let me take you on a remote work time machine and look back a little bit on what has happened to us during the pandemic. So in 2020, when the pandemic started, I think everyone remembers anxiety and some depression kicking in. Coronavirus outbreak has put 37 million of US jobs at risk and equally a big share of businesses around the globe. A lot of school children were sent home and a lot of millions and billions of students were home studying. However, there were some interesting developments as well. For example, health apps and video chat apps have topped the download list of apps in the App Store and other app providers. And we also saw a really big increase in functionality in Microsoft Teams, for example. Or Zoom. Zoom grew exponentially. And we were the users of all those functions. And it just, in a blink of an eye, changed the way we interact. What else? We started thinking a lot about the commute time. We know how much we save for the environment, economically, and time-wise. Our families get more contact time because we don't commute. Cycling patterns have also shifted. And while we have all realized that we can work from home, our willingness to come back slowed down. Many people have revisited their thoughts about the office, and 9 to 5 does not sound that great as a value of the office. And I think that one thing that is important here also to see is that it's not only us wanting to work from home, it's the employers that are increasingly eager to let us do that. If not full-time, then at least part-time. So with the realization that a lot of remote workers, especially those remote workers that have always been fully remote, they don't want a job in the office. And by that time, mental health problems have also started fading away, and Zoom post-pandemic growth has slowed down, and the perks in the office were not that interesting for people, looking at flexibility, no commute, family time, and all those individual-oriented benefits that remote work would give. So a lot of Europeans, especially obviously in Scandinavia, where autonomy and also Agile movement has been common ways of working, people are increasingly working remotely. And guess what? Our profession, technical companies, they top the ranking of companies and industries and jobs that can be and will be done from home. So I also work from home. In the beginning of the pandemic, I worked from the sofa, I worked from the kitchen, from my child's room, and eventually invested into having a dedicated office inside my house. I worked in sweatsuit. In fact, I considered coming in pajama pants and slippers here, but I saw that there is no table where I can hide and change. So instead, I brought some pictures as evidence of that. I did wear occasionally a blazer and pajama pants down the waistline. And I did save a lot on wardrobe for the years when we were working remotely entirely. But I did also had a lot of problems with my back and especially my neck. I did had problems with my kids and spouses occasionally as well, because we had to share the space, this car space, all of us. And my cat occasionally also sleeps on my keyboard and disturbs me or asks to open the window to come in or come out during the very important meetings. So I guess all of you have some experience. So let's test your attention and if you're awake or not. Who rearranged their entire home around the desk in 2020? All right. Who of you had a Zoom call with someone in bed, in the car, or while walking their dog? Great. More people. Who's ever attended 2 meetings at once? And be honest about it. Okay, more than I actually thought. Over the 5 years, the last 5 years, I've done a lot of interviews with individuals around the globe. I've spoken to developers in India, in US, and in Scandinavia, in Europe. And I've worked with teams. I've been a hybrid work coach for teams, and I also work with policymakers. And we have accumulated a lot of interesting evidence, because everybody, I bet every one of you has a gut feeling or an opinion about what is good for us as human mankind in the corporate life. But my mission is to bring evidence on the table and look at things a little bit more objectively, or at least try. So building on the personal testimonies of people about their days, regular days when they stay at home and work entire day at home, I ask them, what do you do? How does your day start when you wake up in the morning, and how does it end when you go to bed? So we realize that there are remarkable changes in daily routines. And it's not only about taking or not taking the shower. It's about having small breaks. It's about being socially isolated sometimes, especially if you are alone living in one-room apartment. And it's about not commuting between the meetings. I mean walking from one meeting room to another. the largest distance to the restroom or the kitchen becomes very, very small. So we also don't get enough physical exercise. We also can enjoy the flow, or at least those of us who are more senior in their jobs. We really like not to be disturbed by colleagues. But at the same time, we don't solve problems together and we don't support others at work. I like classical music, great. And virtual meetings. So we basically have, some of us have back-to-back virtual meetings, which make us tired, much more tired. So I've spoken to people who say at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, that's it. I can't give any more energy into my work because of the flow or because of this virtual meeting fatigue. And guess what? This whole working from home made us so eager to be ready to answer emails and jump on calls with others that in the evening it's very hard to disconnect. So we are browsing. Did anyone ask me a question? Can I answer it now? So our work-life balance becomes work-life integration and not segregation as much when we go to the office. And what it means for the normal office days and the normal remote days, on top of those, instead of just not commuting, we have new type of days. For example, shifted day, when we start our morning work at 10 o'clock in the morning before noon or after lunch, and then shift the work hours towards the evening hours. Sometimes to maximize our productivity. Some of us just were not born to work at 7 or 8 in the morning. And some people shifted exactly to the morning hours and then finish at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And we also have a new type of days with work days with interruptions where we take our kids to school or we take a walk with a dog or we go to the gym in the middle of the day. And then we have an interruption and then we compensate with early mornings or late evenings. And there is one more where we go to the office in the morning and then work in the afternoon from home or vice versa. So all those possibilities, how do they affect teamwork? Well, not very well. And one of the things that is also remarkably changing is the amount of people working overtime. And this is a very interesting question that has occupied my mind for a very long time. And I've tried, if you are aware of research in this field, Microsoft has done a very interesting study on keyboard activity and found that 30% of people have keyboard activity after 8 o'clock in the evening, suggesting that people are working, had a three-peak workday. We couldn't reproduce that, well, because we don't really have that level of data collection from companies, but also because of this shifting attitude, we don't know if it's 2 peaks shifted or really 3 peaks. But what we learned looking back before the pandemic is that, well, there are workaholics, there have been workaholics before, and there always will be. However, the amount of people working more than 8 hours has increased. So the same people on days when they work in the office work less than on days when they work from home. And in 2 companies we have surveyed, more than 50 or at least 50% people said, respondents said that they do 8 and more than 8 hours a day. I guess there are very remarkable changes in the way we interact in digital meetings than in on-site meetings. You recognize probably a stand-up meeting on the left. How many of you stand up in a digital meeting? Okay, there are some people, but that's not really a given anymore. We should call it a seat-up meeting by the digital screen. But the meetings, the quality of the meetings can vary greatly. And here you see an on-site meeting that went very, very fast. 3-people team, Peter, Paul, and Mary, met together and discussed their blockers and the way to unblock people at their job today. Well, in the worst case scenario, this could be the equivalent of a stand-up or sit-up meeting held digitally. And pixeled screens, and very many times we say, hello, can you hear me? Is Paul here? Is Paul here? Paul, can you hear me? You're on mute. You're on mute. On mute, we can't hear you. And so on and so forth. So this is the worst case scenario. And, I'm in this business for more than 20 years with distributed work. I've been told tools will help us and solve all our communication problems. I'm sorry to say, until today, with all the exponential growth in the industry of tools, we have not solved all the problems. And I have a PhD in computer science, and I have all those problems on a daily basis. In fact, the remarkable changes in the meetings do not finish here. Every single interaction becomes a time slot in our calendar. And that's why the amount of meetings has increased a lot. On top of that, if the meetings are not in your team, but in the entire department or an organization, that's how it could easily look like. It's no longer fun to be a speaker. If I was a keynote speaker or gave a webinar like that, I would tire myself to death. And I bet many of you would multitask, would be sitting in 2 meetings, cooking, or you name it. And digital participation is quite a different experience than on-site. I've been trying to measure, actually, the magic that happens in the room. And it's not easy. So we have used a wristband device to measure skin response, to measure how tired and engaged people are. And I can tell you that the difference is, sometimes there is not much difference, but the difference is for people who are leading the meetings. It's increasingly tiring to be a moderator of a digital meeting than an on-site meeting. And the engagement drops much faster in a digital meeting, partially because of the multitasking, partially because of the fatigue, and sometimes because you're not having your video on, or others for that matter. We can engage much more naturally when we look people in the eyes, and when we stare at the black screen, even if we're passionate about the topic of the conversation, that does something to us, that the engagement goes down. Yes, this multitasking has been brought on a different level during the pandemic. We've been walking and talking, we've been browsing, chatting, eating, cooking, driving. How many of you have been driving in a meeting? Oops. Is it still working? Yes. Many of us. Yes, and innocently sometimes we're stretching in our underwear and not realizing that we're still in a call. I will not embarrass you by asking who has done that. So it's fair to say we've survived, we've adapted, and some of us have thrived. But have we asked ourselves, not about me, what's in there for me, but for teams? How do teams work? What a team actually means nowadays. So please meet 4 teams from one company. whose data about their office presence from the badges we have used after the pandemic. This is a graph with the dots as individuals, and thickness of the lines between them indicates how many times, or what's the proportion of time they are on site in the office on the same days. So interestingly, we learned that female workers, team members from the same team, are more together than female and male workers, or male workers are on the same days together. What we also see is that, and this company had 2 days a week mandated office presence. With the 2 days mandated office presence, it's quite easy to avoid some of your colleagues, even in a team, by coming on Mondays or Fridays, for example, and efficiently avoiding everyone or most of the people most of the time. So what I'm trying to say is that office presence doesn't really equate with team co-presence. And it was quite interesting to see that the teams with higher average office presence, someone who wants to in the measuring business, had actually lower co-presence in the entire team. These 4 teams are in a different company. They have invited me to hold dialogues about their office presence. And what we have talked about is, why would office presence matter at all? And I was surprised that these teams have not discussed it before I came and mediated the sections. In fact, in Sweden, we are not very comfortable saying, oh, I need you, and you to come 3 days a week to the office. No, 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 you will never hear that, because it's impolite to ask someone else to change their willingness to come to the office for me. But in these sections, we heard a lot of interesting stories from especially junior members who said, but I want to know what your guys doing. Or, I have nobody to go for lunch with most of the days. And I'm here 4 or 5 days a week. And if you notice, the graph shows that in every team there is somebody on site all the time. And these are more junior guys usually. And there is always somebody mostly working remote or entirely. On demand means that they come for a meeting and then they go home and continue working from home. It's a small town, so commuting is 15 minutes walking or 20 minutes driving maximum. And these guys are mostly senior guys. So you see a problem. Juniors want to work on site to learn from seniors, and seniors don't want to be disturbed, and they work from home. This is a big issue, and only conversations in the teams can help. And in this case, we kind of sense that there is a paradox also, because when these seniors come to the office, the juniors and also other colleagues for that matter start, oh, John is in the office, I must ask him a question. So they get, at the end of the day, completely overwhelmed by the amount of disturbances and questions. Whew, not another day. I better stay at home for the rest of the week. But guess what? If John would come every day to the office, or most of the days, the colleagues would start sensing, oh, John is stressed today. I better ask my questions tomorrow, because I know John is in tomorrow as well. So there is a paradox. The more we stay at home, the more disturbed we are when we're on site, and vice versa. Everybody wonders about productivity, right? I have some insights that are new. I think the big answer is it depends. The productivity depends on whether you have a good office, whether you have small children at home, but it also depends on the type of tasks we do. And I'm not quite sure what's the chicken and an egg here, because what we see is that if we statistically put and analyze people who come to the office every day and those who come to the office less than 1 day a week or 1-2 days a week. So definitely less than half the time. We see that those who prefer to work from home, they have individual tasks and no dependencies with others. Whereas those who come to the office, they have collaborative tasks and many others who depend on them. So their perception of the ability to finish the planned tasks on time is lower than those who are working on individual tasks at home. And one observation more is that during the pandemic, we actually learned very well to chop the tasks into individual things and allocate them to people. And we continue doing that. So task design today, in many cases, does not support or promote any teamwork. And this is something we can work with. We can change that. We also did a study on psychological safety in teams, and we asked how easy it is to speak up in the meetings, to disagree, to bring up critical feedback, to value each other, or to request feedback on something unfinished. And what we learned is that, okay, criticizing others is inconvenient for Scandinavians, even on-site or remote, but most of other things are much easier to practice when you're on-site in one room and more difficult when you're remote, especially when there are no planned meetings. But what's interesting, in the hybrid world, we would think that it would be much better, but the yellow here is not better than green and worse than red. It's a mixture of green and red. Those who are in the office, they have a more team spirit and cohesion, and those who are remote, they're second-class citizens, withdrawing from many important behaviors that promote teamwork and make them feel the sense of belonging. This is not my research, but nonetheless very important piece of research done in Microsoft by their colleagues. The team productivity effects that they have found very much correlate with our survey results as well. When we work remotely, we know less about what others are doing. We have less impactful contributions to the teams, not individual tasks, but collaboration and teamwork. Decreased ability to make decisions as a team, a decrease in the ability to brainstorm with team members, and difficulty to communicate with colleagues. Now, innovation and creativity and brainstorming is a very interesting topic. I don't have much evidence to support that, but a few companies that wanted to push return to office mandate have actually asked me to go in the field and find out how innovation happens by the coffee machines. They are very convinced that it's so. I've been sitting in 2 companies by the coffee machines. I can tell you innovation doesn't happen there. Especially after the pandemic, people are very reluctant to talk to each other. People don't know each other anymore, especially when the company grows. We don't know new people. We develop fewer new ties. And that's why people who talk to each other usually come out of the meeting, walk to the coffee machine, and then return back to the meeting. So it takes a little bit more than just a coffee machine in the office to create innovation. But what we can say is for sure that people talk to each other less after the pandemic, and of course with increasing remote working. And this is another colleagues from Canada who have studied coordination in hybrid teams. And at the end of their work, they ask a question about Agile as such. What they write is as follows. Teams compromise many Agile practices as they acclimatize to working from home. No one stands up for a stand-up meeting alone in their home office. Working from home seems to encourage professionals to focus more on processes, tools, documentation, and planning. the opposite of Agile Manifesto's recommendations. And this is quite important to reflect on. And one of the things that we need to carry with us is the resignation, the big wave of resignations that was reported in US. In US, it was called the Great Resignation. In Europe, we call it the movement, transition between jobs. We don't like the resignation as an attribute here, but it is exactly the same in many different national statistics. And of course, you will say, okay, in 2020, nobody wanted to change jobs. That's why it's catch-up effect in 2021. Yes, it can indeed explain parts of it, but definitely not all of it. We do have data of our own. We are currently working. It's a teaser for the upcoming publication, which is not yet ready, but it's coming very soon. We have data since 2016 of corporate resignations for a company with 15,000 people in Scandinavia. And the resignations over time, the curve shows that resignations in 21-22 are not unprecedented. They happened before as well. But this time, we know a little bit more about the context and why they happen. And here I can bring up also other work that says the rise of remote work could consequently have scaring effects on less experienced workers who learn less from their co-workers. Triggered by this thought, we decided to look at tenure in the company. So how does this curve look like for people who are working in a company for 10 plus years, or for people working in a company and being employed in the last year or last 2 to 5 years? And what we learned is that the likelihood of people quitting just getting the job has increased. And the biggest category today, proportionally, is those who have been in the company for 2 to 5 years. And guess what? Those are the guys who have been onboarded during the pandemic. Remote onboarding does not generate sense of belonging, loyalty to the company, meaningful relationship with colleagues. In fact, our surveys show that the way we interact and build meaningful, friendly relationships at work has changed. The more we work remotely, the less likely we have to have friends at work. We also get less sufficient peer support. And one particular question was statistically significant here. Having someone to talk to about your day-to-day problems. Those who scored low were in the tenure group between 2 to 5 years, and those were also people who scored high on attrition, willingness to change the company. So how are companies reacting to the challenges of remote working? The remote work time machine has showed us this statista, a little information about tech companies. And we can say that the policies are inconsistent. Actually, I followed up this data using FlexIndex database or Build Remote, and recreated even for these companies, things have changed in the last few years. Not only did most of them change their names, but interestingly, but also their policies. More companies have returned to 5 days in the office, and I think that's a scary message to many people, and many companies, in the eyes of me attitudes, become less attractive as employers. But we have our data, of course, of our own. Together with 10 more researchers, we have reached out to 69 companies, and we read their policies, work policies, and we looked how these policies have changed since the beginning of the post-pandemic period. And what we see is that some of the companies orient towards office working and some towards remote working, and some, we say, are undecided or cater towards those who are fully working from home and those who want to be fully on site. We have only 5 fully remote companies, out of which not all of them, but just one has been fully remote before the pandemic. So there have been some changes. We have only 4 companies who returned to full-time office work. The majority of companies, actually more than 50% of the companies, orient towards office work, but not everybody has strict mandates for office days. Some do, but there is also a category on the bottom, employee choice. So employees can decide whether they want to work in the office or from home, or departments, teams, managers decide. So differentiated, not one-size-fits-all solution. The orange dots indicate the trajectories also of changes. Some companies have had a one-size-fits-all solution and changed to differentiated strategies. And some companies have changed. The most dramatic change was in an Italian company that went from employee choice to 3 days a week in the office. And then there was a big pushback from the employees, and they decided to go, after 1 month of hearing the feedback, they decided to go down to 2 days a week in the office, which was seen as a better compromise. But interestingly, we also see a trend that most companies change to the more office presence, not less office presence. That is the only company that increased the flexibility. If you want to know a little bit more, we have captured also the formulations of the policies and how the required office presence is announced to the employees. The darker blue color indicates the mandated days. The lighter blue color indicates that the company recommends. And that's a very interesting approach. So companies who do not subscribe to the fact that 3 office days a week must be every week, and every week all developers have exactly the same needs for office presence or co-presence or interaction and for days of focused work. They say we have a very explicit expectation for where we want to be, but of course there are exceptions, and exceptions happen more often than not. So we are fine with people making decisions. But this is, as a company, this is what we want to be, to feel like as working here. You might ask, do policies work, or do return to the office mandates work? I do have data on that too. So in these 2 companies, we have Finco with a flexible policy. The only restriction is that they do not accept fully remote work. And Telco with a 50-50 office presence, remote work during a calendar year. Now, a very vague policy, if you ask my opinion. But what we see here is the self-reported office presence, where 68% work at least 50% of the week on site in a flexible policy company, and less than that, 58% work the required office presence on site in the mandated company. Now that's quite interesting, that it takes a little bit more today to convince people to commute to work than just saying you need to return these many days a week. Finco, in comparison with Telco, who for some reasons, good reasons, couldn't renovate their office and make it more comfortable for people to return and work on site, has invested a lot in soundproof floors, in a good canteen, in renovated team spaces. And that's why their people want to work more in the office. They also say teams decide how they want to work. And they emphasize that teams have to have these conversations, sometimes inconvenient ones. So, what can we conclude from this? Is remote work great and office work evil? Or is the office work great and remote work evil? I guess I will take the most oftenly used stand as an academic. It depends. Or borrowing a phrase from yesterday's keynote, it isn't nothing and it isn't everything. And it applies both for office work and for remote work. So remote work paradoxes, 3 paradoxes that I would like to bring as a conclusion of this presentation, start with a remote work that feels healthier but can easily lead to mental problems and even risk the burnout. And if you ask me, well-being is such a big thing influenced by so many different things: social well-being, physical well-being, mental well-being, and so on and so forth. So there are different types affected in different ways. Remote work increases productivity, but not all companies, because of that, get more things done. Because individual productivity sometimes is on the expense of team productivity. When a senior developer gets his hyper-productive mode, it means he or she do not contribute to mentoring and contributing to learning of more junior guys. And remote work increases job satisfaction and also attrition. Now, that's very interesting. When people now apply for a job, the first question they ask is, can I work remotely? It doesn't mean that they want to work remotely entirely, but it does something to the attractiveness of the employer to have the possibility to work remotely. But if you have never had a job, if you don't know how the corporate life works and how to build social relationships at work, you might miss out on a lot of important stuff that develops this sense of belonging. When you don't have friends at work, then a bigger pay is the only thing it takes for you to quit. And having a job interview on a video call in your pajama pants and a blazer on top is quite easy nowadays. So another thing that I want you to remember is that task and task design matters a lot. So if in your company you can stimulate and facilitate and boost the collaborative task design, it will bring people back to work more on site. However, if you have individualized tasks, then announcing that people need to return to collaborate and to innovate by the coffee machine will definitely make people upset. So to succeed, you have to find your own what works for you formula, with keeping in mind the task design, the circumstances, because there are not all teams with new hires that need to mentor someone. There are teams that have been working together for 3 to 5 years, maybe 5 is a long stretch, 2 to 3 years together. They know what they're doing. Everybody knows what others are doing. They have it all set up and they function well as a team. But if some of these circumstances are not in place, you need to think how much co-presence is needed and from whom. So circumstances and team needs may change on also a weekly or monthly basis. So I would argue that one-size-fits-all solution is not really a good one. So it's not like in one company with 3 office days, everybody needs exactly 3 office days of co-presence and every single week. But you can rely on teams making decisions only when you have autonomy and accountability. And if you don't have that, I don't blame you for willing to solve that for your teams yourself. So to preserve agile teamwork, I think it's important to cultivate a few important things: team orientation, accountability, and we go before ego attitude. And with this, I would like to leave some time for questions and also advertise the upcoming book together with my colleague Marcin Florian, who is here present. We are writing all these experiences and important messages to the companies and individuals as well in an upcoming book called Intentional Workplaces That Actually Work. Thank you.
We do have time for questions for Darja. Please. Yes.
We didn't go around with the microphone.
So shall I go first?
Sorry. I will hand over.
Thank you so much, Professor Darja, for this wonderful, wonderful presentation. This area is very, very close to my heart because I'm doing research on hybrid work. So as you are the expert in both distributed software development and now hybrid work, so what are the differences between the distributed teams or globally distributed teams and hybrid software development teams in terms of team dynamics and collaborative models? And the second question is, what kind of leadership styles you think are good in particularly hybrid software development? Just two questions.
Yes, I can thank you for the questions. It's very big questions, two huge questions for which I could give a lecture of its own. I can easily resort to the answer, it depends, on both of them. I think it's very difficult to say something universal that works in all circumstances. So leadership is a very interesting topic in the rise of remote and hybrid working. I think it's not fun anymore to be a manager. It's a different profession nowadays than it used to be when we worked on site. And leadership practices for hybrid and remote workers have changed a lot. So I think we have a lot of one-on-ones online, scheduled ones and not spontaneous ones. We sit in more meetings, digital meetings as managers, and we lose touch and not notice when things go wrong. So this is one of the biggest issues that hybrid leadership has to solve. How to know that things are okay and how to know when things are not anymore. And for the distributed work, I'm sorry, I won't be able to answer fully. The things that, if I reflect on my own research, I've been working with topics like distributed work package distribution in terms of Conway's law, how to align architecture with the work packages sent to different teams distributed. So the teams were distributed. Today, with remote and hybrid work, all teams are virtual teams to some sort. So that's one big difference. Another thing, we have been looking into cultural differences much more than we do today. Today, it's not only applicable to, or challenges of distributed work, applicable to companies having outsourcing or insourcing partners. It's to everyone. So that's a big difference as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Darja. Impressive work, as Robert said earlier, so super interesting, a lot of data. Though I'm missing something, and maybe you can correlate some of your findings towards all remote companies. I mean, what are they? How are they coping with well-being, burnout, belongingness, and so on, as a sort of a baseline? Or do you see the same patterns also during the pandemic when it comes to attrition and other parameters? How are they, or are they behaving completely differently in mitigating some of the things that you have identified for
Yes,
hybrid works?
definitely. Thanks for the question. It's a very important one. Indeed, remote first or fully remote companies is something that has a remote first culture. So all the decisions by default are taken in a virtual environment involving everyone virtually. And there is no bias in who is going to be promoted in a company, those that the managers see on site or those who are remote. It's remote equally for everyone. And I think we can also all relate to fully remote meetings in comparison with hybrid meetings. The dynamics is quite different, right? It's the same for all type of tasks that companies do. But one important thing is to remember, when you get employment in a fully remote company, you know what you're buying. Now, we have been, most of us, employed before the pandemic. We chose a different company we are in today. Someone said yesterday, we woke up in a different world, in a different company. That was a Spotify company. Yes, we woke up in a different world. We did not sign up for this. We are not working with like-minded people anymore. And that's a big difference and a big challenge for both leadership and for us to find a place. I think that companies can have fully remote teams, fully on-site teams, and some sort of hybrid teams with a co-presence, aligned co-presence inside one company and have everyone satisfied. But you have to live with a disruption of changing the teams. And then I think it's important to work with like-minded people.
I was just wondering, because looking at my own experience, I worked in the States for multiple years, fully remote. So I was in Europe, working in America. We took team collaboration to the max, because I have an XP background. We were on a development gig as a team for 12 months. And we went 5 days a week mobbing. So mob programming, the 4 of us in the same Zoom call the whole day. And I dare to say that we were pretty effective. Could call us a high-performing team. Is that something you have seen before?
Yes.
During your research, teams
Absolutely.
going that approach?
Absolutely. I think that remote is not equal to less productivity at all and less teamwork. There are teams who survive. I found one formula, but you are not going to like it. Put a team in a crisis situation with a force to deliver, and they will make it. And they will be able to work remote, on-site, you name it, it doesn't matter. But that's a hard formula to give to someone.
Hello. Me.
Yes, Darja.
So yeah, thank you very much for the keynote. With your experience, like having contact to so many teams that face these kind of problems, I imagine that you observe some solutions, curious and creative ways to overcome some of these challenges. So I will ask you to, can you tell some of these interesting strategies for us?
Yeah, sure, thanks. I think not everybody struggles. As I said, I have seen good teams working also remotely. And most of those teams have, for example, visibility into what others are doing through a mirror board. And mirror boards can be big, and guess what it requires? A separate monitor. So these are just 2 examples of solutions that are needed to be able to work closely together. Then having, for people who have problems with discipline at home, yeah, there's laundry, there's dust, there's food, there's cat, dog, hands. I've heard about hands as well. Netflix, yes, those guys work much better remotely when they do 4 to 6 hours of pair programming or mob programming with others. it puts them in completely different mode. So when you saw these daily routines for fully on-site work, fully remote work alone, then there is yet another daily routine for a fully remote day with someone else on a link all the time.
I got a chance to ask the next question. First of all, congratulations on the really beautiful layout of your slides. I'm really envious.
It's a running joke, you must know it.
I didn't, but I can imagine. So two questions actually. You talked about psychological safety. There is a bit of a shadow which is about toxic behavior. So the first question is, have you seen any change in distribution or different types of toxic behaviors depending on the work mode? And
we haven't looked into that particularly. No. We just have some behaviors that are not really team-oriented. And I have seen research that remote work in general is more inclusive to everyone with their differences. But interestingly, a lot of that research would naturally be translated into, office work is for extroverts and the remote work is for introverts. It's not like that. Actually, those who are more introverted unexpectedly depend more on office presence than you would think. Because although extroverts have higher social needs, they can satisfy them in many different ways, whilst introverts are very dependent on having these close, meaningful relationships at work. So I actually see a lot of introverts, and this is something that we are collecting data right now on personality types and their work routines. Not toxic behaviors, though.
is it okay with one more question?
Yes.
So
Robert, is that okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
So maybe this one is the obvious one, but something is happening around artificial intelligence.
Yes.
And it will probably influence how we organize. Any observations on what's going to happen with the different work types? How will it impact organization? And
it's a very interesting world we're living in, and I'm all the time contemplating with the thought maybe I should do research in another field now. But to be honest, it's quite interesting. I'm interested in psychology of interaction between people and AI assistants. And I think that sitting remotely with an AI assistant is not so socially isolating anymore. So I would be quite interested to hear experiences from developers about that and how their social needs can be satisfied by AI.
Back here. Thank you for your talk.
Yes.
I have it's a little bit, I guess, more of a fluffy question, so I don't know if you're going to be able to answer it. But a lot of the discussion centers around organizations, what organizations can do. I'm kind of curious to know if any of your research revealed the degree of intentionality that the employee, like the role that the employee plays in the remote working setup. Because I find that like an element of the on-site that is missing from remote is intentionality. You put on nice clothes, you maybe put on perfume, you care about how you look, and that creates an energy about you when you go into the office in most cases. When you're working remotely, as you said, you might have the tendency to wear your pajama pants and put a blazer on for a given meeting. And I think that changes psychologically how you approach many elements. So I'm curious to know if there's any insights on intentionality.
Great question. Thank you. I think that one of the things that I usually discuss at length with companies when I present this daily routine slide is that, I mean, wearing pajama and not wearing your perfume is not necessarily bad. But how many days a week is it not bad? I don't think it's healthy. I don't think being forced to come to work 5 days is healthy. And I don't think voluntarily residing at home 5 days a week without shower, pajama, perfume, or with pajama, sorry, without perfume, is healthy for us. So, and I don't like to say the truth is in the middle. In this case, it is somewhere in the middle. And I definitely agree that this intentionality and discipline is, yeah, but what do I know? I'm not very modern thinking. Now everyone doesn't care about a lot of things. When I grew up, we read books about good manners and, what color of the suit you dress up for which occasion. Now it's all gone. I think the world has moved on and changed. I'm just scared for the, pajama pants in the school. When I see school children in pajama pants, I can maybe tolerate that. Workplace with pajama pants. Now I've seen some women wearing pajamas, these silk pajama suits at work. Yeah, maybe not my favorite outfit. And the world we might live in. Sorry for too personal information maybe.
Hi, Darja. Thanks very much. I'm sort of slightly maybe following on from that. I'm interested as an academic and an educator in this next generation that are coming up. And I've talked to various people this week about the problems that we're having with students who were young during the pandemic, so they haven't had pre-pandemic or sort of during pandemic work experiences. Have you noticed that change? So what I've noticed is that a lot of students now really struggle with teamwork. And it's not to do with face-to-face or online. It's just that they struggle with teamwork, full stop. And I don't know, I struggle often with how to support them through that. Is that something that you've noticed in your data? That the really new junior software developers that are coming into the workplace now, I guess, for the last couple of years, have had such a negative experience during their education that it really affects the way that they engage with the workplace?
I'm afraid I'm not the best person to answer that. So Sweden has never closed schools.
Okay.
So I don't see that. But what I see is that I've heard, at least, I'm also a very different academic, as we have discussed with Robert. I don't teach. I will teach in the fall a little, but I rarely teach. But I hear from colleagues that the students that are not present on site, they don't know how to form teams with others. And this is a socially awkward situation for them when they are asked to form teams. And what we decided as a university is that we will return to full-time studies on site. We are not doing, we have hybrid rooms for accommodating some remote for some serious reasons, but we have decided we are on-site university with on-site teaching.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Thank you for the questions.
Yes.
Thank you, Darja.
Thank you very much.
Excellent.
Oh, yes.